Hey, welcome back to my channel. I know I took a little break, but it's fall now, the weather's cooling down, and I want to come back and hit you with another video. Now, as you may realize, if you're looking around, the set is not exactly what it normally looks like. I'm actually in my living room on my couch today, and I'll tell you why in a moment. I have a lovely assistant today. His name is Rocket, and he's not letting me live, so he's going to be a part of the video a little bit today, off and on. Now, one thing you may not know about me just by viewing this channel and all the previous videos I've done before is that I love horror movies. Like, they are my absolute favorite. I watch them year round, and I really just turn it up a notch for Halloween season, obviously. So being that it's peak boo weather time, it's spooky season, it's cuffing season, it's prime time to curl up on the couch and watch movies with your boo. My boo just skipped out on me. So since Halloween is basically tomorrow at this point, I waited a little long to make this video, my bad. I'm gonna dive into 10 of my favorite horror flicks that I think would be perfect to watch while you're handing out candy or, you know, avoiding handing out candy, eating candy, whatever you're doing. These are great movies to curl up on the couch with for Halloween. Now, let it be noted, I'm not calling these films the best necessarily. I'm telling you what I like. Like, it all boils down to taste. I personally happen to think I have pretty good taste, but I just wanted to give you a disclaimer. Every movie on this list is not necessarily for everybody, but they're for me. So I'm going to give you some of my recommendations. Now, since I'm such a big horror person, we'd actually be sitting here like all night if I was going to get into every single movie that I really like and think is fire. So while you probably know all the old school classics and the new school classics and some of like the burgeoning classics from the last 10 years that would make my list, the ones on this list are more recent films, maybe from like the last 5 to 7 years that I feel like get skipped over a lot. They're not like super indie that you've never heard of them. I mean, maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But 9 times out of 10, when I talk to people about these movies, they tell me they haven't seen it yet and they want to know like more about it. Like, well, what is it? Is it good? Like, should I check it out? Yes, you should check all of these out. Also, one more note, these are presented in no particular order. Like, I didn't want to give like a ranking because I feel like when you do that, you had to kind of quantify each film against the other, and I don't really like to do that. I just want to give you my review and a synopsis and why I think it's a great movie to watch. As such, these are all spoiler free. I'm not deep diving into the details of the movie. I want you to go in just as blind or just with enough detail just to know what you're getting into so you can really get the full experience and get the fright for yourself. Like, that's how I like to watch the movies, and I wouldn't want to deny anybody else that experience. So no spoilers here. All right, with all that said, let's hop into it. Movie number 1. So first on the list is Hereditary. Now, I just wanted to go ahead and knock this one out of the way first because I feel like it's the one that's gotten the most buzz. It's from last year, but for whatever reason, a lot of people I feel like still haven't seen it. Like, it's not unpopular, but I guess I just don't know the people that are actually really watching it. I loved it. I think this one is great. Now, as with any other movie that breaks out of the industry norms, people put too much on it, calling it like scarier than The Exorcist and whatnot. I personally don't think it's scarier, but it works, it scares, and story in the same fashion, and thus it sticks with you the same way. So I understand where that comparison is coming from. This one stars Toni Collette in a tragically underrecognized performance as a miniatures artist whose mother's sudden passing forces her to come to terms with her tumultuous past with her mother and the many mental issues that run in her family's bloodline, and how that affects her own parental relationship with her teenage son and daughter. Now, it's haunting because of the raw depiction of a family that's weakened by a family tragedy, by that death in the family, and it explores the themes of fate versus heredity. Basically, how much can you determine the trajectory of your own life when you have to carry the burdens of the generations before you, in a nutshell. Now, I know as I'm saying that, like, none of that actually sounds scary. It sounds more like a family drama. But trust me, it's scary. Like, it goes completely off the rails. Like, even though it is dealing with all of this, it goes nuts. All right, up next at number 2, we have Veronica. Now, Veronica is another one that garnered a lot of comparisons to The Exorcist, but that's for more practical reasons this time around. People said it was scarier than The Exorcist as well, but it's scary though. Like, don't get me wrong. The Exorcist is just like top tier. Also, like, The Exorcist is actually based on a true story, and like really based on a true story, not like how you have all like 50 horror movies claiming they're based on a true story and they're actually just very, very loosely based on the crimes of Ed Gein. This one is actually based on an actual case that you can go research if you feel so inclined. It comes out of Spain. It gained notoriety as it was the first documentation of supernatural forces on an official police report. It follows the plight of a high school girl named Veronica, of course, in the week after she messed around with some homemade Ouija board during a solar eclipse. You can pretty much guess how the story goes from there, but it plays out in such a chilling way and puts a different spin on the haunted by a unleashed demon trope that we've all seen 150 times. Now this one has some great scares without all the extra CGI, you know, like what you're used to from like The Nun and La Llorona. There's none of that. It also doesn't do the little jump scare violins, you know, you know what I'm talking about. Those, it doesn't do that in this movie. It relies heavily on the story and the atmosphere. And even though you know just as well as Veronica knows what's going on, the creep factor comes in with just like the things that are happening around her, how it plays out, and the tension comes from her trying to figure out how to close this door she opened. It's a really great watch, I promise you. Now, if you're shy about subtitles, don't be. Like, the foreign films are like where it's at. At number 3, we have Goodnight Mommy. This is another foreign film. Again, with the foreign films, I really don't think they come to play. I feel like the American horror movies tend to be very like formulaic, very ABC, 1, 2, 3. You kind of know what's going to happen. The stories are predictable. Not 100% of the time, but for a lot of the more popular movies, you kind of know where things are going. The foreign movies I've watched, you do not know where things are going, and Goodnight Mommy is a prime example of that. This film tends to let the unsettling images and the unsettling concepts really like sit and sink with you, so it is a bit slower paced, but like it's a constant creep. It's a creepy experience rather than like you're constantly jumping out of your seat because something popped around the corner. Like, you have to really like, you get in the character's head and like, what is happening here? This 2015 German film is about twin brothers who begin to suspect their mother isn't exactly who she says she is after she undergoes a cosmetic surgery procedure. It's full of quietly creeping scares and leaves room for open speculation about the true nature of what's up with mom until the movie's chaotic climax. Again, with most of these, it's tough to get too deep into it without spoiling everything, so I don't want to give too much away here. This one is a slow-paced mystery with all sorts of creeps and wild images, and the end of the film is nothing short of haunting. Coming in at number 4, we have Creep. Now, you may or may not have heard of the Creep franchise, but I feel like this one is overlooked for 2 reasons. Mainly because it's a lower key, like, indie flick that a lot of people haven't heard of, but also because it seems to be overshadowed by its sequel, Creep 2. Now, even though the sequel seemed to have a higher budget and it was slightly better liked by critics and fans, I personally am a bigger fan of the first one. Now, I think the reason for that is the fact that you have no idea what's going on with the characters, the concept of the movie. You have no idea what's coming at you. In the first movie, I feel the second time around, even though it's still unpredictable, you kind of know what to expect. And that having no idea what to expect is what you need for this movie experience to really work, because Creep is a great one, and it just hits you in the side of the head and you don't know what's up. Now, this 2014 film is found footage without being super obnoxious about it. You know how that craze kind of got out of control with paranormal everything, and everything's a found footage movie because it costs like $2 to make. This takes advantage of that, and it also works better because there's a reason for it to be found footage. It follows the story of a budding videographer named Aaron who answers an ad in the paper for a one-day shoot. It turns out that the client is an eccentric dying man named Joseph who wants to make a goodbye video for his unborn son. However, as the day progresses, Aaron gets progressively more uncomfortable with Joseph's strange behavior. This one's great for me because it provides like a mixed laugh and scare combo. Like, you don't really know how to feel about what's going on because Joseph's behavior is so like just cringingly off. He's unnervingly friendly. He's a constant joker, but it's just like, it's too much. So you kind of feel like you get the sense he might just be a socially awkward guy. Like, maybe he's on the spectrum and he doesn't really know what's funny. Or maybe he's trying to mask the pain of his having a terminal illness and knowing he's not going to be there for his son by using all this ham-fisted forced humor. Like, maybe that's his coping mechanism. Or maybe he's just damn crazy. Like, you really can't tell. By the time you can tell, you know what? Watch it. I don't even want to get too much further into it. Creep is a big recommendation for me. I really like this one a lot. All right, at number 5, we have Upgrade. Now, full disclosure, I personally wouldn't really call this a horror movie. I think of it more of like a sci-fi, action, thriller kind of situation, which I love those as well. But it's listed in the horror category under psychological horror, and I can kind of see that. But since it's genre listed as horror, I'm putting on this list because I love it. And I really feel like more people need to see this one. It's not horror, it's just not horror to me. Like, maybe it scares somebody. I don't know. Either way. This 2018 film is set in the near future and features the story of an auto mechanic specializing in classic cars who ends up being left quadriplegic after a violent attack that consequently leaves his beloved wife dead. Just as he's about ready to give up on life, one of his clients, who happens to be a billionaire inventor, provides him with a solution. A brainstem implant that will restore his ability to move and walk. The thing is, it also gives him like extra super duper strength and kung fu skills on top of all that. I've heard this one described as like what Venom should have been. Like if Venom, you know, the one that starred Bane, what's the actor's name? That guy. If Venom had been like this, I think it would have been a better liked film overall. It's a highly, highly slept on gem that like really examines the lengths a desperate person will go to try to like reclaim their life and to get revenge. But it also like really examines like the lengths that technology is taking us to. Is that good? Is that bad? Like, what does it mean for us? Plus, it features like some really graphic, violent fight scenes. And again, that's also my thing. I love this one. Again, I feel like it falls more into the sci-fi realm, but if this sounds like it's up your alley, I highly recommend you check it out. All right, up at number 6, we have Would You Rather. Now, this one has the same categorization issue as Upgrade, whereas I feel like it's more of a thriller, suspense, slightly gory, violent type of film, but it wasn't scary to me, but it might scare somebody. Think of it kind of like in the vein of like a Saw franchise. I didn't find those to be particularly scary, but I found them to be interesting. Again, since it lands in the horror category, it lands on this list because I really like it. Now, this 2012 film details the plight of a young woman named Iris. She's struggling to make ends meet while taking care of her ailing younger brother. He suffers from leukemia and is in desperate need of a bone marrow transplant, and Iris is scrambling to find extra money to cover his treatments. She finds out about a dinner party that a wealthy philanthropist is throwing where he'll select a worthy person in need and fund their biggest financial burdens. However, upon arriving, she quickly finds out the philanthropist has a cruel game of choice in mind. Things start off pretty tough and only get worse, and what starts out as a desperate cash grab almost immediately devolves into a brutal game of self-preservation and survival. I won't say too much more about this one because as much as it sounds like your basic story, it has some twists and turns, particularly at the end, that really kind of highlight how far you're willing to go for money to survive, and also whether or not it's all really worth it in the end. At number 7, we have The Invitation. This is another suspense horror making the list. The Invitation kind of provides a worst case scenario of an uncomfortable situation that like any of us could end up in, particularly if you're one of those people that stays really cool with your exes. This could happen to you. In this 2015 film, a man named Will accepts an invitation to his ex-wife's house for a dinner party with several of their mutual friends. He brings his new girlfriend, and his ex introduces the crew to her new husband and a couple of new friends of theirs. However, as the night progresses, Will becomes uncomfortable remembering some things that happened while he and his wife were married, and he begins to notice little things that seem very off about his ex's new spouse and their new friends. It's a paranoid feeling that he can't quite put his finger on, and no one else seems to make much note of it, which causes Will to question his own perspective while fighting the urge to just get the hell out of there. This is another low-budget one with a cast of relative unknowns, but I think that serves well to have you put yourself in the character's shoes, since you're not looking at like somebody well-known. Like you're not looking at this person as Brad Pitt or as Michael B. Jordan. You could look at him and be like, man, what would I do in that situation? Like if I was cool with my ex and they invited me to their house and I started feeling like something was up, but nobody else saw what I was talking about, what would I do? Now, personally, I know what I would do, but I don't really have that attachment to being perceived as polite, as a lot of people do. I'd have been out. But this one doesn't go where you think it's going to go. This one really provided something fresh and surprising. You're not going to see this coming. So definitely check out The Invitation. At number 8, we have The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Now, if you're one of the people who doesn't like all these kind of off-the-wall concepts that I keep throwing out here with the movies I like, and you're more into a traditional, good old-fashioned scare, this one's going to be the one for you. It's like claustrophobically creepy, and it gets more and more intense as the story wears on. This 2016 film details a night autopsy conducted by a father and son coroner team trying to figure out what happened to a woman found naked and unscathed with no clear cause of death. She has no outward signs of trauma, multiple broken bones, and intense organ damage. And so as they attempt to piece together what could have possibly occurred to this unknown woman, strange supernatural occurrences take place in the increasing intensity, causing father and son to band together against whatever force she carries with her. Now, this one does have some jump scares. If that's more your thing, again, it's not really mine, but some people kind of need that to feel that a movie is scary. This one's going to provide that for you. Now, I don't think they're cheap jump scares. They're effective ones. They were effective on me anyway. So I think this is a great little spooky selection for Halloween night. If you're going to be sitting around eating your trick-or-treat candy, this is a good one to throw on TV. At number 9, we had Midsummer. Now, I know you've more than likely heard of this one, but have you seen it? Because most people I talk to haven't seen it. It's relatively new. It came out over the summer. I think it just hit Blu-ray a couple of weeks ago. I've seen it twice now. I saw it in the theaters. I watched the director's cut, which I highly recommend, but it's a little long. So if you're not in for like settling in for a long haul, just watch the regular version, which is also a little long, but it's a good movie, I promise. Now, I've heard it's supposedly like divisive in the streets. I really don't know like what it is people don't like about it. I've actually been doing this thing on my IG stories. The whole month of October, I've been watching a scary movie every night of the month and reviewing it. So I included this when I watched the regular version. And I'll say here what I said there. I don't really see what there is not to like about this movie. Like the worst thing you can imagine happening happens like 5 times during the course of the film. And it happens in broad daylight. Like what could really be scarier than that? This one follows a couple in a long-term relationship named Danny and Christian. They're about 5 minutes away from breaking up when Danny suffers a family tragedy. Feeling obligated to see his girlfriend through this, Christian invites her on his boys' trip to Sweden to spend time at a ritualistic Midsummer festival. While they're here, they're all put to the test in every way imaginable. Again, this is a hard one to get into because you can't really gauge from like the trailer or anything what's going on, but you know it ain't good. Since it's equally a wild ride in a horror-scape as it is an examination of a relationship that's like dying and it's on its last leg. So just like everything's going crazy around them at this Midsummer festival in this setting, and they're all finding little reasons to stay, is the same way like this relationship is just melting down. And yet the boyfriend and girlfriend are still finding little reasons to stay. Like I like things like that. Not to make it sound not scary because it is, but I like movies that have a secondary element to it. So if that's your thing, you're really going to like this one as well. And again, I don't want to do spoilers and I might be already saying too much, so I'll leave it at that. Check out Midsummer if you haven't. And finally, our last movie, the one that I know for a fact that a lot of you are not going to like, but some of you might, and I liked it, and that's what this is about anyway, is The Witch. Now, from what I gather, this one isn't really all that well liked by moviegoers, and I think that's really mainly because it's kind of slow-paced. So if you're used to like a faster-paced movie, again, with all the jump scares that people have gotten used to, I really think that's bad conditioning for moviegoers, but it doesn't really have a lot of that going on. It's not for everybody, so if it's not for you, don't come yelling at me. I told you ahead of time. The story follows a Puritan family cast out of their community and forced to forge a life for themselves out in the wilderness. After a season of failing crops and a tragic loss, they begin to suspect the influence of evil witchcraft working on their family. But being that they're living on the edge of the forest all alone and have no one else to blame, they begin to question if their teen daughter could be the source of all their problems. So again, yes, it's slowly paced. Yes, they speak in like ye olde English, like they use a lot of ye's and thou's, kind of like the Bible back in the day, like how people used to talk back in the, I'm guessing this is the 1600s. But the slow burn really like explodes into craziness. And it all devolves into like this shocking climax that you're not gonna see coming, but by the time you get there, you realize that like there was nowhere else to go but here. Like the story was always gonna end this way. If you sit and think about it. I like a movie that I have to sit with and think about. If that's not for you, don't even bother. And that rounds out my list. I didn't want this to get too long, but I do have 3 little alternates, just kind of like honorable mentions to pull on in. One would be The Ritual. Very much like Midsummer, it follows a group of friends that are going to a foreign nation, although they're going from like just Great Britain to like, I don't know, maybe it's Sweden too, Switzerland, somewhere like that. They go on a hiking boys trip to kind of work through some of their issues and shit goes down. Second alternate is Eli. It's a new movie that came out on Netflix a couple of weeks ago. I really enjoyed it. It's basically about a bubble boy who has immune system problems like air. He's allergic to air, like that air burns him. Either way, he goes into a secluded hospital for an experimental treatment and starts to suspect that the doctor doesn't have the best intentions. I'll leave that at that. And my last honorable mention is The Black Coat's Daughter. I just watched this one the other day. I think it's from about 2016 or 2017. And it basically follows the story of 2 girls who get left over winter break at their boarding school. And they start to feel like the influence of an evil entity. And I'll leave that one at that. Most of these I can't really say much about. Just watch them. And that wraps up my list. So let me know what you think about these selections. Let me know if you've seen these or if you decided to watch these after I recommended them to you. If you have any suggestions for me that you think I may not have seen, I'd just like to get your feedback on the movies. Again, this is like a passion of mine. I'm really into scary movies, so I love to hear other people's thoughts on them. Leave a comment below, like and subscribe, and thanks so much for watching. I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys, and I'll see you next time.